Hi, just a brief introduction to this one. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do a little experiment, whatever, probably because I'm bored at home. I'm going to do the same picture in several different media. I'm going to start off doing a knife painting in oils, then this afternoon or later on I'm going to do a watercolour. I might do acrylic, gouache and pastel as well. See how soon I get fed up with the idea. But basically I'm doing it with oils. I'm going to do a knife painting, which means I might actually, pondering out loud now, I might do a brush painting of the same thing as well. I've got my palette set up, which I'll show you now. It's basically a piece of greaseproof paper. I'm using SAA paints, and I've got lots of wobble, titanium white, lemon yellow, cadmium yellow, yellow ochre, terra verte, cobalt blue, ultramarine blue, cadmium red, light red, raw sienna, no, burnt sienna, burnt umber, and right over here I've got some Payne's grey, which is next to titanium white for doing grey things. On the canvas, which is definitely homemade, it's the backing board from a picture frame that I bought, which I coated with PVA a couple of times, and then I've stuck a piece of linen on it to give it a canvassy feel. And now, consider if you can get that, you get there's the tooth of it, which is pretty much like the canvas covered boards that you buy in art shops. I've done a very brief drawing. Don't know where the idea for this picture came from. I sort of woke up with it in my head this morning. It's not enough there for the camera to focus on. It's sort of a little pond, got some trees going up. There's a horizon about a third of the way down, some distant trees coming in there, horizon with some mountains going on in the background, big expanse of field, which I'm not sure what I'm going to do with, some bushes, a pond and some trees. Basically that's that. So with a bit of luck you should see lots of different versions of that. Right, that's my little introduction out the way. I'm going to make a start on doing the actual painting. I'm using palette knives, much the same as I did with the last one I did. In fact, exactly the same. I'm using, as you've seen, more colours this time. I won't necessarily use them all, but I want to keep the yellows in case it turns into a summery picture. The cadmium red, I might want to put a little soldier in there somewhere, and I know I'm going to put some cloudy sky in, so I've got that as well, and the earth colours down that side. So without further ado, I will start sorting out the sky, having not got my bigger brush. This is the story of my life, full of good intentions, and then I forget to put out the things I need. Oh well, I'll use a smaller one. That one will do. and sky. Here we go. As usual, I'll start off doing some white, put that on there, little bit of the flow medium, which I'm using not because I want it to flow, but because it will dry quicker. As I said on the intro, this is the backing board from a photograph, not a photograph, a picture frame, and all I've done is PVA'd it, stuck an old piece of sheeting on it for a canvassy effect. Right, so some light in the sky. There's some under there so it won't be a big blob when I get finished. Now I'm going to mix up some blue, titanium white, cobalt, just a tad. This is the most time consuming part. I might speed over this bit so I won't talk too much. It will be a summery sort of picture. Spring is just starting to pick up. I had a glorious day here yesterday. It's not bad at all today, a little bit cloudier, or more cloudy, but still nice, it's warm. It would be a lovely day to go out for a long walk, but this quarantine business kicking in, long walks are out of the question. I know some people can, but I'm supposedly at risk. So I've had a letter, ironically, from Mr. Johnson saying I've got to stay in, and then he was rushed into hospital because he didn't. There we go. Serves the bugger right, that's what I say. So I'm just filling in space and covering the board, well, nearly covering the board. I'm still leaving the odd little bit of the burnt sienna background. The underpainting, by the way, I put in just to give it a bit of cohesion. It's System 3 mixed with PVA, and it's burnt sienna. Sometimes I lighten it a bit, sometimes I add a bit of white, but I quite like this burnt sienna background. What I do is I use it with PVA as the final layer of the priming. So altogether, between this paint and the piece of MDF is 2 layers of PVA, layer of canvas, 2 layers of PVA, all soaked into it, and then on top of it, when it's all rock hard, this layer of acrylic paint. And I don't think there's any question about it being an archival background. The only problem might be if you leave it lying back down in a puddle and the MDF warps, but they didn't say that for anything. Right, okay, I'm coming further back in the sky. As I've got quite a long focal length, for want of a better word, it's going right back into the distance, so the sky I'm painting here is probably a good few miles away. I don't want too much on this side because I'd be putting these trees here. So I'll keep this side behind the trees fairly smooth, but not boring. Put some white and some blue into it. Right, there may be a bit of a joggle there. I had to turn the video off for an hour or so. I had a delivery from the SAA for the first time ever. There was a cock-up on it, so I've had to spend the last hour or so sorting that out. Feel really sorry for people like that at the moment. Anybody who's working, not just frontline staff as they put it, people in hospitals and care staff, but anybody who is having to go out to work in these conditions and having to, well, in an ordinary job, even like making up orders and things like that, having to sit or maintain 2 meters distance. It's how do you do it in a huge warehouse when you don't know whether your stock's coming in, and it doesn't bear thinking about really. And yet the lady I spoke to, ever so cheerful, ever so apologetic, ever so helpful, and knowing people, I'm being a bit of a cynic, I should think that there's probably been quite a few people ringing up saying, "Where's my order? Why have you cocked this up? Blah blah blah." And because I mean, there must be hundreds of people like me sitting at home painting, expecting stuff to arrive because they're using more. It really is very, very strange time we're living in at the moment. Right, back to work. I'm trying to fade this sky out a little bit as I go further away, adding more white. Remember that, as I said before, that sky over there is a long, long way away. I'll put some more blue up the top here, or some brighter blue up the top there to bring it forward. just thinking it's a good job I did, as I said before, I'm going to be doing this in lots of different mediums. Good job I started off with the oils, because if I'd been doing acrylic I'd have had to throw it all away. Just adding a tiny touch of grey into this furthest sky, just to kill it a little bit more. Right, now at the top, although I've used cobalt everywhere and in all of the how-to and how not to books, it tells you never to mix your blues in skies. I'm putting a tiny touch of ultramarine up here just to brighten up the top of the sky a little bit. The ultramarine is a warmer blue than the cobalt. It's more on the purple spectrum. It's got a redder tinge, so that should bring the top of the sky a little bit closer than the furthest bits. Because this sky is quite big, as I said at the beginning, the horizon's quite a long way away. So there's miles of difference between there. Physically miles, if it was a real picture. Right. Sky in there. Because I'm going to have these trees coming up there, I want to put a darker cloud just sitting over there. So, Payne's Grey, titanium white, touch of the ultramarine, and into that a little touch of the burnt umber, really grey it up. Burnt umber and ultramarine, no matter what medium you're working in, always mix together to make a fairly convincing black. as I say, the trees are going to be coming across there, so I'll just put some grey clouds on this side. Wending their way across the sky, don't want them too threatening. Will also give me a reason for putting some changes down there. So we can get a little bit of cloud shadow so that we don't get a uniform green on the grass. If it's going to be grass, I'm not sure yet what it's going to be. Some more blue as it goes further away. A little bit more depth. Touch of the cadmium in there, and when I say a touch I mean just a tiny touch, bit like that. Just giving a little bit of weight to this cloud. There, I think that is going to do for now. Missed a bit of sky over there. Not sure what's going in there, possibly some distant trees, but I'll cover it all up now. Right, so we've got some sky in, copper. Now I'm going to go in with a smaller brush palette knife. Clean this one off. So I'll be coming back to that afterwards. I just want something small. Actually, I'll use this one, which isn't small, but it can go small. I want to mix up. I can't lift this palette up because it's past my painting table. But I'm going back to the cobalt blue, mix it into this grey colour I've already got. Some of the umber. Yellow ochre. I want a greeny grey. Lots of white. Blue. And that will stand me in good stead over here. But before I do the trees over there, I want a very pale colour for my distant mountains, which I shall use. Start off with the cobalt again. I need to put out more white. I got my little tube of white, because you always use at least twice as much white in oils as any other colour. Which makes sense when you think that in watercolour the white is the paper, and that's by far the biggest part of the picture. So there we go. That has got a lumpy bumpy bit on it. You see, don't know if you can, there's a lump of old paint, well not a lump, tiny little speck of old paint. Light red. More white. That's better, it's smooth as smooth now. Now, what I want to do now is put in some hills going across in the far distance. So I'm getting a roll on that knife there. It's the roll that you paint with. You don't just go splodge, but you use the roll sparingly. And by just using the edge you can make very, very fine lines with it, as long as the roll's at the back, and then come down from that. I love palette knives. I think arguably this is my favourite way of painting. It's saying to somebody on an email this morning, it's visceral. It's, you're in there with it. This and pastels, you are just, I don't know, part of the landscape yourself somehow. There's no distance between where you are on the brush. Although, if you've seen my videos, very often use my fingers when I'm doing watercolour and stuff anyway. So there, hopefully that sits in the background somewhere. Take it right the way across. Palerize it out as it goes over there. That's a technical term, palerize. Don't want it too mountainy. It's not one of my Snowdonia type pictures. I just want something fading into the background. Into that tiny bit of a grey-white sky colour. I'm just going to put some highlights in. no detail, we're miles away. Don't want it very thick there, because I'll be going over with trees. I want something to link this. There's going to be a field going across there. I want something in the middle distance. Yellow ochre, white, and I'll do for now yellow ochre. Well, I'll put a tad of this terra verte in. I do use terra verte and olive green, sometimes hooker's green, depending on what brand I'm using, because if you use them as mixing colours rather than using green as a green, if you use them as a basis, they work perfectly well. It's just if you decide, oh, I've got a tube of green paint, I shall use that because that's a tree. That doesn't work. Smooth. So we've got some distance merging into nothing. Some more lighty colours. All I'm doing for the lights is using palette scrapings, bits of light colour that I've used before, scraping them up, using them again. I think that's going to be the top of a hill there. Just putting in some greeny colours that might be very distant trees. Just a little bit of texture. looks like fiddling, but it's not really, it's playing. Right. What else coming down across there? Give the idea that we've got a valley. Maybe a little bit of river. Its way across there. Yeah, getting somewhere. The trees across the middle distance, and then this field going across there. I'll take it to about there, I think. Right, I've got my tree colour mixed. There's not enough contrast there really. Now, some really dark blue, Payne's grey, touch of the burnt umber, just to get some shadows underneath those trees. Now, there's field coming across there. Oops. I'm mixing green now, lemon yellow, I touched the cobalt. This is bringing it into the foreground. Right. Okay. yeah, do a different colour set of trees going down there. Maybe we've got a little path or something going down the valley. Nice dark bit where it goes behind. Counter change, juxtaposition, call it what you want. Just something to show that there's space behind there you would need to be able to walk in. In fact, a little touch of light red, a little touch of white, I should put a little pathway going across there. There, and over here. Here, start off with the umber, some of the terra verte, get a really earthy colour now, some yellow in it, yellow ochre. Now I've got a yellowy brown, which you can't see, but there, you see that? It's a sort of yellowy brown colour, into which I'm going to put a touch of the blue, a touch more. It's the cobalt blue I'm using. I want to mix up a sort of browny green to go here. That has just left a bush shaped thing which just needs pure happenstance. Darkness underneath. And there we've got some bushes which turn into those things, whatever they are. down the road. More of this bushy thing here, getting a bit brighter. And all I'm doing now, I'm not mixing anything, I'm going with colours that are on my palette. I'm looking for darks and I'm looking for lights, just to try and get a little bit of structure. I need more dark in there, so I am going to mix some ultramarine, burnt umber, really dark, rich dark in there. I don't really need any detail in there at all. Coming back to my cadmium yellow, a touch of white. Whoops, I've got a touch of light red in there as well by mistake. Still not a bad colour. Touch the ultramarine, sort of sunny grass, and away we go. Flatten it out. Notice that I'm using the direction of the strokes. To show the lie of the land, and this is fairly flat, so I'm just using flat strokes. If when I was doing those, I was doing them growing up, when I was doing the foliage, I was blobbing. That's another technical term, blobbing. Right, now here I'm going to have a pond, which is the whole point of it. Mixing up some white with some of the skyy colour that's left over on the other side of the palette, and a bit with a bluey colour, and all I'm going to do is paint and got water going uphill there. Don't worry, I can get rid of that. Right, now Terra Verte mixed up with this greeny colour, bit of a darkness down here. See, I'm going up the hill there. I'm still trying to work out where this idea came from. I sort of woke up with it in my head this morning. Didn't have the person from wherever coming to disturb it, although it did have the postman. The far side of it. Here I'm going to put a bush. Possibly a gorse bush. Payne's grey. Cadmium yellow. More Payne's grey. Got a really lovely dark sappy green there. Again, I'm still using just palette scrapings, getting changes of colour. Counter change, dark against light, light against dark. getting the colours brighter, stronger as you come into the foreground, using more of the light red, more of the cadmium. Because the grass here and the grass over there, and over there even, are probably all the same colour. What you have is aerial perspective, all the little bits of gunk in the air which stop you seeing. With great clarity what's miles and miles and miles away. Now I'm not making any attempt to paint bits of grass. What I am doing is making a rough sort of texture so that people will think, oh look, that's grass or grass, depending on where you're from. I've been watching too much Charles Evans. Always worth a watch, Charlie. Very, very, very good artist and superb teacher. Several of his videos, well, I'm a fan of his, so his YouTube site, there'll be a link somewhere on mine. Brilliant, brilliant artist. He's another one I've got so much respect for at the moment, because usually very successful man, he's up and down the country doing demonstrations, workshops all over everywhere, and because of the lock-in now, he's just doing stuff on YouTube which he hasn't done for years. Because I suppose he hasn't had time, there's no money in it as such. But it's difficult. I'm not a professional artist. I don't need to pay the rent through doing this. All I need to do is cover my costs. But for those who are fully professional, this must be a terrible knockback. So people have my sympathy. Right, trees. We're getting to the state now. We're going to put trees in. Yellow ochre. Clean the brush. Not the brush, the knife. Scraping out a place to mix. Don't want it perfectly clean, but it doesn't need to have too many other colours in it. Yellow ochre, touch of white, nice roll on the knife. Tree trunk. Right, it's back on again. I don't know what happened there. It seems to have gone off. Don't know how much you've missed. I was too busy concentrating on making trees, but it's back on now. I'll see when I edit how much we've missed. I'm not having a great deal of luck with my video recording at the moment. Right, we've got sort of tree shapes growing out there. This is where I either totally mess it up or it works. So, I'm going to use a middle-sized triangular knife, some clean tissue, make sure that's fairly clean before I do it. Spoil it if I have lumps and bumps on it. So I'm going to need 3 tones, a really dark tone with the Terra Verte and the ultramarine. Going to have a middle tone with the colour I've just mixed and some cadmium yellow, and then when I've got these two in, I'll mix up a really bright one. Now this is going to be full summer, and so start with, I need to put in chunks of foliage. Now these are going to be the ones out of the sun. I'm being very, very gentle, trying not to disturb the paint underneath too much. And letting bits of sky holes show through. These are where the leaves are thickest and they don't show much going through them, but they're never completely solid. This is quite an exciting bit because if you totally cock up, you've got no real option but to scrape it off and go back in again, or wait for it to totally dry and then do it. Okay, put an extra branch in there. Middle coloured green. Clean, 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 clean. Now this colour isn't as thoroughly mixed as the dark. I've still got bits of yellow and bits of green coming out separately. Just using a very, very gentle touch, letting the knife dance over the surface. Don't want to pick up too much stuff on the underside of the knife. Cadmium dark green. What I'm doing now is blending them slightly. Not too much, but just blending the dark bluey green with the other one, so that they look, hopefully, like masses of foliage. Using some lighter yellowy green, fairly thick now. So I'm going to put some white in there. A bit more of the yellow. When you're mixing light greens, it's tricky sometimes. It starts just get a bit minty. And all I'm trying to do here is get some impression of light coming into this tree from this side. Back to the dark. Still going. What I'm doing now is trying to get a good mix of darks and lights so that we tend to look as if we've got chunks of heavy foliage. Right, we're not far off now. Some shadows underneath those trees. Just to anchor the trees to the ground. another light blob across there, and some dark in the middle. All I'm doing, just lights and darks, trying to get some contrast in there. Something's happening outside, I don't know what. I don't know if you can hear it, people shouting about. Right, now some middle distance colours across there. Stuff here, bits of foliage, not foliage, bits of flora and fauna growing up. More dark under there. A little bit more dark along the edge of the pond. Gosh. Don't know who that motorbike belongs to, but he spends an awful lot of time welling up and down our road. What I'm doing now is just looking over the picture and trying to pick up little bits of contrast which need fiddling out with. Trying not to ruin it while I'm doing it. Right, now get some dark on this little brush and some really dark. Payne's grey and these two dark browns. Hopefully Still going? Yeah. Right, I'm going to leave that there. It could be much better, but for now, the horrible blob there, which I'm going to have to get rid of. For now, I'm going to call that finished-ish. I might come back later, have a look, fiddle around with it a bit more, but for now that's going to be called Pond 1. Then I'll come back in and do another version in watercolour, I think, next. Notice there should be a branch coming down there somewhere, and something across there. Yeah, that'll do. Scraping a few branches out here and there. Right, I'll be fiddling before long. So there we go. That is Pond 1 in oils, a bit more dark, still fiddling. Pond 1 in oils. Yeah, that's better. Right, see you later with Pond 2.